and going through a lot of personal stuff. And I was ballooned. I was just a very, very, very big blow. And I couldn't hydrate. I was so thirsty. I was drinking gallon after gallon of water and nothing was happening. Your fasting blood sugar should be between 80 and 120, and yours is close to 400.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Be Your Own Boss. He was 123 kilos and diabetic. And the doctor said, if you don't lose weight, you're going to die. What he did from that point is absolutely incredible. Not only he got fit, you must have already seen it in the thumbnail, his picture, you know how fit he is already now. But he, from that point, built a global business. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest this week is Naz Musa, the founder of Spartans Boxing Club. Spartans Boxing Club is a global company having boxing gyms in several countries. 11 in Singapore, 5 here in the UAE, in Cambodia, in Philippines, in Australia. The list is, very, very long though. It is a global business that he has built. Now, how do you go from just thinking of starting because you don't like the gym that you go to, and from there build a global business out of that? This is a fantastic journey. We're going to hear about that. Let's welcome Naz. Naz, welcome to the Be Your Own Boss podcast.
Thank you so much. That's a great introduction. I loved it. Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So, Naz, let's start from the beginning, like we always do on the Be Your Own Boss podcast. If you could just tell us about your family, where were you born, your childhood.
I was born in the Sudan, and my father was an outspoken medical student at a time when being an outspoken anything in the Sudan in the late 60s, early 70s was not a wise decision. And therefore, as soon as he graduated and as I was born in 1971, he moved to the UK for a 6-week course that just meant he could stay there. My mum gave birth to me and followed him a year or so later, and I stayed with my grandparents for a couple of years.
In the UK?
No, in Sudan. She went to the UK. Yeah. And in 1975, so when I was 4 years old, I got on a plane and was taken to the UK, and I grew up in the UK. So I grew up in, initially at the time they were in sort of South Wales, and then towards London, and then up towards Manchester, and then from mid-70s really up in the northwest of England, a place called Blackpool. And I grew up there, went to school there, went to university in the UK, and was my formative years, my education is all in the UK, yeah.
Growing up in the UK, did you think that you'll become an entrepreneur? Did you have that aspiration?
No, of course not. My father was a doctor, so I had to be a doctor, right? And I'm the eldest son. Yeah. And so therefore the disappointment of not being a doctor was palatable in our family. But to be honest with you, I studied sciences at A-level and was going to go to a university to do a science degree. And very, very, very close to going, weeks before going, and I just said to my dad, I don't want to do this. This is not, it's not for me. It's not what I want to do. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm not really sure, if I'm honest, but I'll go and do a business degree because my grades allowed me to go and do a business degree. So I went to Hull to do a business degree and just thought it'll work out. I'm sure something will happen. It'll work out. And he said it was the wrong decision. To be fair, he said it was the wrong decision and you're making a mistake, but, make your own mistakes. And it wasn't until, I guess that would have been 1989, so it wasn't until a particular exit in 2003 that he finally said, yeah, maybe it was the right decision. So, I was destined down the sciences, as were all of my younger brothers and my sister who's now a dentist, right? So I kind of set precedent that they didn't want set.
So you're kind of the odd one out in the family there.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
You went into the business school, and before the podcast when we were talking, you set up, you told me about the the different countries and different nationalities that you were working with together, right? Or in the business school.
Mm.
Right. And how did that turn into your first job?
Yeah. So I, as part of my course, I had a year in Denmark. My second year was in Denmark. And we were a class of 36 students from 9 different countries. And we lived together and we studied together. And although we were based in Denmark, we traveled all of Europe, really. We went to Eastern Europe, we studied for a while in Morges, the global headquarters of Nestle. We studied at the World Bank, went to the UN, and we traveled around together and studied together. And I was the youngest in the class. But there were Americans and Italians and Poles and French and Spaniards and Germans and obviously Danes. And it was an incredible environment just to be in. Forget what you were learning in the classroom.
Yeah.
But the cultural impacts of understanding the people that you spend all your time with was significant. And I got the travel bug. I always had the travel bug because I was an immigrant, right? And all immigrants by their nature traveled there. But I got the real travel bug when I was there, and I began to sort of fall for Eastern Europe, and especially sort of Prague and Budapest and these cities. And now they are well-known weekends away in Europe. But in 1991... the wall had just come down. Eastern Europe was a cold, dark, grey place. There was no McDonald's in the centre of Prague like there is now.
Yeah.
And so I found it fascinating. So when I went back to university, I worked with the tourism board for a while, and then finished my final year, and wrote a thesis based on the use of tourism as a development aid for Eastern Europe. Which I thought was genius, but now I look back on it, it's a bit amateur. But still, I was 20 years old, so I'll give myself a break. And then straight after that, I joined a UK tour operator straight out of university. Finished university on the Friday, and on the Tuesday, flew to a little island called Mallorca off Spain, and joined a tour operator called Air Tours, which is now called My Travel, I think.
Okay.
I had a year in Mallorca, and then a couple of years in Jamaica after that. Honestly, I think that period, the first period of university, that first year, my father in the UK at that time used to get means-based grants. So if your parents earned a certain amount, you didn't get any money from the government because they were supposed to top you up. My father being the, God rest his soul, being the very left-leaning psychiatrist that he was, said that if you want to go to university, you work your way through university. So I worked 2 or 3 jobs whilst at university, and I also hustled a bit, I set up a few parties in nightclubs and made some money. And so that really began to seed this mindset of maybe trying to keep control of my own destiny when it comes to finances. And so when I was in Mallorca, we were doing similar things. When I was in Jamaica, we were doing similar things. So it definitely grew in those 3 years overseas, 4 years overseas.
What kind of role was that from there?
I mean, I was a rep. They had a graduate training scheme, so you could go and learn things to do in resort and then go back to head office and then do finance and marketing and sales and all this kind of things.
So you go to different all functions.
Theory.
You work in.
The theory is that. So when I was in Mallorca for the year, at the end of the year, that was really hard work because you're a kid, you're 21 years old, and you have responsibility for people's vacations. And in the UK, just a little bit of a backtrack. Air Tours was a sort of a working man's tour operator, right? So you saved all your money all year. You have your 2 weeks holiday from work. You buy an Air Tours package. You go to Spain. You go to Tenerife. You go to Greece. You go to whatever. And those 2 weeks are so important to you because they are literally the 2 weeks that you saved 10 months for. And they are the only 2 weeks you're going to get off on holiday with your friends or with your wife or with your kids, whatever. And if anything goes wrong, you don't fix it for another 12 months.
Yeah.
So there's a level of responsibility to the people that look after you when you're on the ground that is sort of palpable if you understand it. So I found it really quite I was in an awful hotel, repping an awful hotel. Too many stories for this podcast and too sweary for this podcast, which I'll tell you another time. But you learn what's important to people. You learn how to make money, but you also learn the the value in ensuring that someone who's worked really, really hard for these 2 weeks gets what they paid for and benefits from it and goes back happy. And then the same when, Jamaica, the people spent a little bit more money to go to Jamaica, and therefore, maybe they were more middle class than the working class. But it was exactly the same environment. The added complication for me about Jamaica was that I was then resort manager for the island. So I had 8 or 9 staff, and we had 2 planes, about 500 guests coming in every week. So that was, negotiating hotel deals. It was making sure the team were looking after the guests that are coming in, making sure people are allocated to the right hotels, making sure the rooms are booked in the hotels. Yeah. And, I think about it now, I would have been 22, 23 years old. And that's a hell of a lot of responsibility for a 23-year-old to take on. And really the responsibility isn't the fiscal responsibility of your company you're working for. Yeah. It isn't even the commissions you can make selling Blue Mountain coffee or tools or whatever. It's the responsibility of the 2 weeks that those individuals have waited all year for. Exactly. And their first time in the Caribbean. And it's not just the 2 weeks, it's the 5 or 6 weeks that they can tell their friends about when they go back, and they can show the slide, the memories they build with their kids. And you have a responsibility for that. And I understood that really quite early on in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. Like, we all do that, right? We the whole year we plan that one vacation. People who want to take just that 2 weeks, and then you save money, you plan for it, and then you have to make sure that when they come there, it's really perfect and it's worth all the all that saving for them.
100%. I had loads of great fun stories, loads of learning. Had an incredible 2 years in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And then I made a really adult decision. Otherwise, I'd still be there today. Such I was having the time of my life, believe me. But I couldn't see a career overseas in that role. And I couldn't see me leaving unless I made a conscious decision to leave. So I quit. And I went back to the UK. And I thought, I'll back myself, I'll get something, or I'll start something, or something will happen, I'll be okay. And I quit. And I moved back into my parents' house in Blackpool. And whilst I was overseas, there's a trade publication called the Travel Weekly magazine. And at the front or on the back pages, there was always these incredible parties being thrown in London by this company called Holiday Autos. And they had Take That would play there, and all the travel agents would go. And I was like, this company is amazing. I want to be part of that company. So somehow I managed to get in touch with them, and the owner was a guy called Clive Jacobs. And I was invited down to have a chat. So I went, the northwest of England to London is a good 3-hour train drive. And I had no money. Obviously, I just wasn't working, but I was like, I'll find the way. Went down and met with a lady called Angela and another guy called Mick Shires, and they just told me, I thought this was going to be an enormous company of 300 people.
Yeah, because they're on the cover of the magazine.
Yeah. It's like 12 people in an office. One guy was eating cornflakes, lying to somebody about, this was January, about a car hire in July or something, the cars are running out or something. And I generally thought I was going to have to walk in and maybe do some backflips or do an act or something. This is the kind of impression I thought I was walking into. But it turned out to not be that. It was above a tailor's shop on Savile Row in London, and small group of people, but clearly a real buzz in that business. And they asked me to join to be, what was my first ad? International manager. And I said, what's that? And they said, well, we're going to have international offices, so you can be the international manager. I said, how many do we have now? And at the time they had one. I thought, okay. And anyway, the business grew. We grew to, what did we grow to? 23 offices around the world and 500 staff, and a really phenomenal business that I was really proud to be part of the growth of. And then we sold it. And we sold it to lastminute.com in 2003.
So later that company did grow into a big company. So it was just 12 people at that time, but when you joined, and then
we grew really fast. I don't know if it was 12 or 15 or 20. It was a handful of people, but then when we sold it, we had 23 offices and 500 staff. And we sold it to lastminute.com, which was the media darling at the time in 2003. And because of the generosity of the founder, I made a little bit of money. And that was the time that when I went up north and I gave my dad a check and gave my mum a check. He said, actually, maybe that decision wasn't the wrong decision all those years ago.
Yeah. I mean, you were part of the company right from the beginning. So then you got a portion of that exit.
So it was interesting. I didn't have any equity in the business, no, but Clive would have given us equity. The exit came too early, and therefore he looked after a few of us. But what he also allowed us to do was run our own parts of the business as independent businesses. I was running our international businesses almost like they were my own. I had complete freedom to do what I wanted to do. If I messed up, it was okay, just not the same mess up twice. And it worked. And then that gesture at the end of it all, where he comes into my office and gives me a check, really has driven my behavior with every employee I've ever had. Even to this day, and I don't know if Clive would ever listen to this, but he lives in Dubai now, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that there's like 7 or 8 of us that were part of the core team that built the business, then sold the business. I'm pretty sure that if he called all of us now in our 50s and 60s and said, hey, let's just bring the band together, start a business, I'm pretty sure we'd all do it. I would guess that 80% of us would get back together and do it again.
Yeah, that would be nice, right?
That's driven by a ridiculous level of loyalty to the way that you were treated between 1996 and 2003. And we're now in 2024. This is 21 years later.
Yeah.
But that's something that I've taken forward in all of the businesses that I've led.
Yeah.
You make sure your team's good and your business will be okay.
Absolutely. It's all about the team. So let's talk about that a little bit here. So first of all, the exit, right? So how does one take a company to that selling point or exit? And was Clive, right?
Clive, yeah.
Was he actively looking for buyers, or did you just
look? Everything's always for sale. That's it. Everything is always for sale. It's just whether somebody gives you the right number for it, right? And so the business was growing well. We pivoted post 9/11. We were a trade business, parties, selling to the travel industry. And obviously that changed after 9/11. So we did a really quick pivot and became much more direct focused. That then put us in the radar of more B2C businesses instead of sort of B2B businesses. Lastminute.com was the leader in leisure and travel at the time. So of course we fell into their radar. We were profitable. We had a really strong management team and a really good team below us as well. And companies like Last Minute listed on the stock exchange could raise money. So, I mean, I wasn't privy to the conversations that kicked off the sale. We were part of the process. But everything's always for sale.
Yeah.
If you run a business that's well run, well structured, well managed, somebody will buy it one day. But if they don't, as long as you make money, who cares? Right?
Yeah. So then from here, from that point, after that exit happened and you came back home, what was next?
Well, I was young. I was 30, what was I, 32 maybe? So there's not enough money to stop working, and therefore you got to keep working. And as part of obviously the business had been acquired, a lot of it was the going concern, the revenue, the sales, the team. But a good proportion of it was the fact that we had a very strong management team, and lastminute.com wanted us to be part of their management team. So I was responsible for some of the international businesses for lastminute.com as well at that point.
Okay.
And look, I mean, when you work for somebody that allows you the freedom to be entrepreneurial within the protection and confines of an organization, it's then very difficult to go and work for a listed company. Lastminute.com was listed. You have regulatory requirements, you have reporting requirements, you can't swear as much, you can't do all the things, you can't shout at each other. Like we'd shout at each other every single day at holiday hotels. And I was finding it quite difficult. So that was in 2003. In 2005, that business also got sold to Travelocity in the States.
Okay.
And I think at that time I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is an opportunity. I came to Dubai on holiday.
Okay.
New money holiday. I stayed at Burj Al Arab and came in the Rolls Royce from the airport. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I had a week there as well. And I liked it. I really, really liked it. And I liked the fact that for the first time maybe in my life, I had visited an Arab country that I was proud to say was an Arab country when I went back to wherever I was going back to. And as an Arab by birth, it made me feel really quite good. So I went back and I said to the CEO at the time, I said, hey, listen, I can't continue, I'm going to quit. And I was young, but I had a 6-month notice period because of the scale of my job.
Yeah.
So I said, nobody's going to wait for me for 6 months. So I'll just keep working. And then after 3 months, I'll look for a job or do something. And if I'm competitive, I promise you, I'll tell you, and I'll go sit in the garden for 3 months. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'm going to move to Dubai and do something. And then over that first few months, we decided to set up a joint venture to launch Holiday Autos, the original business, here. 50-50 JV between me and the lastminute.com group. So I did that. Came to Dubai in July 2005 and launched my first properly owned, my own business, which was Holiday Autos Middle East.
Which was what, sorry?
Holiday Autos Middle East.
Holiday Autos. Okay, so it's the same company, but Middle East. Yeah. Okay. And how did that go?
Went really well. I learned a lot. Obviously, during the setup, the American lawyers on their side wanted to put in various clauses, and I learned a lot about put options and call options and all these things that I had no idea about. And one of the provisions they enforced on me was a call option, which means that after a specific period of time that we agreed, they had the right to buy my 50% off me. So my lawyers recommended that we also put a put option, which is the sort of the polar opposite of that, which is at the same period of time, I can make them buy my shares.
You have the right to send,
I told them that it was a really silly thing for them to do because it felt that they were shooting themselves in the foot, but they didn't listen to me. So we did that 3-year put call option and 3 years of very, very hard work, minimal recruitment, did everything myself, grew revenue incredibly well. We were the car hire provider for Air Arabia, for Etihad, we had Gulf Air, we had every travel agent selling here. Worked really, really hard with a very, very small team. Obviously, the valuation for the put and the call was based on EBITDA. So 3 years later, I said, here you go. I'm switching you my shares. And they said, oh, but I said, it's your contract. You told me you wanted to do this, blah, blah, blah. Give me the money and then we'll talk again. So they bought me out, but then gave me some more equity and I helped them rebuild the business as a consultant, really. And in the meantime, I'd started another business called Gulf Reps, which is a travel PR business, which was mine until 3 months ago. So it then becomes really quite difficult to work for somebody else.
Because you're like in that momentum, you want to...
Well, I'm just not a good employee. I'm just a horrible employee. I think I'm always right, and I'm very hard-headed, and I want to see at the table. I want to make the big decisions. I don't like being told what to do. There's a lot of reasons that make me...
You're a serial entrepreneur. You just start something, grow it, And then, how did Singapore happen?
So another some friends here had set up in the Daily Deal space. Had set up a you remember the Daily Groupon and Living Social, all this stuff. They had set up here in 2010, end of 10, a business called Go Navit. 2 awesome entrepreneurs here, and they asked if I would come and help them set up a travel vertical for their business. What they identified really early was the value of these businesses was going to be the scale of the database and to a point revenue, because they were being set up, scaled and sold in 1 or 2 years. So revenue profit wasn't massive. It was about the scale of the database more than else. But revenue is really important because you have to pay for that scale. And however many 2-for-1 cupcakes you sell, you're not driving much revenue.
Yeah.
However, if we were to set up a travel vertical, which is what my specialty was, then, $500 hotel for $250, that's a lot of revenue that you can drive.
Yeah. I just wanted to explain to the audience, I mean, those who, if you're not aware of the concept that Naz is talking about, Groupons, and so these are basically discount deals that it's like, you come up with deals you tie up with different brands, and you offer discounts that are otherwise not available for you as a customer when you walk in. Right?
Exactly right, yeah. So we set up a travel vertical, and it was awesome. And our first deal, I think is still, I'm going to claim it, I think it's still the largest daily deals deal ever done. I think I'm going to claim that. It was with the Banyan Tree in Ras Al Khaimah, as it was then, Banyan Tree in Ras Al Khaimah. And it was like 2 nights, and you got a spa treatment, and there's a discounted rate on the room, and you also got the minibar. Now, we kind of negotiated the minibar because for the hotel, the minibar doesn't cost that much. They're just small bottles of,
miniatures.
Little miniatures. Yeah. But they sell them at enormous amounts. So therefore, the value of the minibar is really high. So it felt like you're getting an absolute bargain because you're getting all this hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dirhams worth of stuff for free.
Yeah.
And we sold $1 million in like 3 days.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And then that business then attracted interest from Living Social and from Groupon, and in the end we sold to Living Social, and then Living Social asked me to go and help do exactly the same, set up a travel business for their 5 assets that they bought in Asia, in Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia and Korea, and the regional head office was in Singapore. So my partner and I at the time, and my wife, decided to move to Singapore. And then after about a year, I was made CEO of those 5 entities, and that's what took us to Singapore.
Wow!
Then we sold it again. So there's a cycle of upsell.
Build something, sell. Yeah. You lived in Singapore for some time there, or did you?
We were there in total for 4 years.
4 years. Okay.
Yeah, 2 years. 2 years without kids and 2 years with kids. Well, both our kids are born in Singapore.
Nice. And so when was it that this whole thing happened where, you were diagnosed?
Oh, no. So you have to go back to that. So 2008, remember we talked about moving to Dubai and setting up the business, and that whole time in 2008, which was the 3 years after I set up, so the put time when I was trying to make them buy the business off me, was super stressful. It was the first time I'd done it myself. And I was also going through a separation. And the Dubai stone that everyone gets when they first move to Dubai? Mine was more like Dubai 10 stone. Right? I was burning a candle at both ends, working too hard, partying far too hard. Yeah. Super stressed trying to sell the business. And going through a lot of personal stuff. And I was ballooned. I was just a very, very, very big bloke. And that's when the doctor... I was actually flying back from Saudi Arabia. And I couldn't hydrate. I was so thirsty. And I was drinking gallon after gallon of water and nothing was happening. So I went to the doctor and he said, come back tomorrow morning fasting. So I did. And he was very clear. He said, look, your fasting blood sugar should be between 80 and 120 and yours is close to 400. So it's a very big problem.
Yeah.
Go away, think about it, come back tomorrow, we'll have a conversation. And that's what the conversation was. So that was in 2008. And that's what kind of started me on the boxing journey. So that was in January 2008. And he told me I had to lose 40 kilos, close to 40 kilos. And it's really difficult, like trying to lose that much weight when you've got that much weight on you. Like even walking, running you can't. When you've got, imagine 40 bags of sugar extra and you're walking or running or swimming, and you go to the gym and you're super self-conscious because everybody around you is so healthy and fit and whatever.
Yeah.
And I was finding it really difficult. And a friend of mine said, you should try boxing. Because in boxing, you have to be present. Otherwise, you get hit, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, why not? And I went to a gym in Al Quoz. And it was in a dirty warehouse and smelled really badly of, not of today's swear, but of like 10 years worth of swear. And there's something about it. You know, nowadays, of course, it's all art galleries and coffee shops, right? It wasn't then, right? There's no air conditioning. It was just an atrocious place. But there was something about it. It was so different from my life. I was living in a house with a pool and driving a Porsche and thinking I was the, God's gift to mankind. And then suddenly you're not. You're just in a smelly warehouse with people who are fitter, healthier, better than you.
Yeah.
And a young guy called Richard Comey said, right here, skip. Of course, I don't skip. No idea how to skip and whatever, and then do this, and then do this and that. And then he had us in the ring, sort of bobbing below a rope he'd put in between the two corners. And I just thought, this is amazing. Nobody was looking at my weight. Nobody was looking about how much I was sweating. Nobody cared I was there. I just fell in love with it. And
so boxing as for fitness is more of, like, it's not just the fight, it's all like...
It's not the fight. 99% of the people you'll see in any boxing gym don't want to fight. Fighting's... There's a few of us whose egos are so significant that think they can fight. But most people don't do it for that. They do it for mental clarity. They do it for releasing some aggression. They do it for health, wellness, fitness. There's no better way. So, I went back out and tried really hard not to be sick because it was such a hard workout. And as I was driving home, I thought I loved it, but would I ever go back unless I was really scared about something? I guess the answer, I answered it myself by sort of saying, I'll probably go back once or twice a week. And that was never going to be enough. Being chosen to fight at White Collar on June the 6th. I'm going to fight a German guy, and it's going to be filmed for German TV, and do you still want to do it? And I said, okay. You feel like a god, honestly. You feel like there's 700 people in this room, and 698 of you couldn't get in the ring. Never really addressed why I was overweight, and so my weight started to come back on again. And of course it did, because I was, clinically probably depressed with everything that was going on and all the stresses that were around me at that time. Alex, my wife, was very clear. She said, you have 6 months. You need to break even in 6 months. Otherwise,